will declare yourself to me.
I think one of the things that we've done with this film is ended where the image of Elizabeth as known begins. So what I'm really saying is we looked at the icon and everything that went with the icon of Elizabeth I, and we made a film about what went into what possibly went. An interpretation, not of history, but of personality, of what went into the making of the icon.
Your Majesty would improve all these matters if you would agree to marry.
Aye, marry then.
Aye. But marry who, Your Grace? Will you give me some suggestion? For some say France and others Spain, and some cannot abide foreigners at all. So I'm not sure how best to please you unless I married one of each.
Now Your Majesty does make fun of the sanctity of marriage.
I do not think you should lecture me on that, my lord. Since you yourself have been twice divorced, and are now upon your third wife.
The Eastern answer to the choosing of Cate Blanchett was that Cate was in my destiny and I was in Cate's destiny, and it's as easy as that. It was meant to happen. I actually saw Cate first in the promo video of Oscar and Lucinda, which hadn't yet come out, and she was unknown, except that I'd heard through my casting directors about this girl who was very good, but who was primarily on theatre in Sydney. Didn't take it very seriously, and I saw this promo reel. I saw about 5 shots of Cate, and for some reason I was absolutely convinced I was Elizabeth, and then from that point onwards I carried on fighting for her. Despite the fact that she was an unknown and this was a really expensive film and everybody was keen to take at least a known face, I was kind of very convinced, so I came out and we did a screen test on her, and then everybody was convinced.
May I join you, my lady?
If it please you, sir.
I was very surprised, but then when I found out Shaker was directing it and that they were using actors that were like Geoffrey and Christopher Eccleston and Eric Cantona and Vincent Cassel and Fanny Ardant, I thought, well, this is such an interesting project because it's almost like they're busting apart the myth of Elizabeth. And in England particularly, the sense of Elizabeth is so received from the end of her reign. I thought it'd be interesting to approach it with a what-if perspective, so I was really excited by it. And having seen Bandit Queen, I thought that sensibility attached to this potentially really dry subject matter was, yeah, really electric, so I was excited. I think people, when they think about Elizabeth, think about the icon image, because as an older queen, she destroyed all the pictures of herself. So we understand the stable, absolute monarch, but I don't think there's ever been a film or a television series that has explored the instabilities of her reign and the absolute horror and terror that surrounded, the early part of her reign, and also her relationship with her sister and her father. And so it's kind of about her girlhood into statehood in a way, and I suppose the shedding that happens along the way and the people who are expended in her life along the way. I think she's someone who has grown up in an incredibly unstable, tumultuous environment, and she's an absolute survivor. And she's someone who has got no solid ground on which she walks. So one minute she's a bastard, next minute she's princess, then one minute she's a bastard, then she's queen. And I think it's a very relevant period of her life, particularly now, because she was 25 when she became queen.
King Henry of Anjou sends you his brotherly love. He trusts that with your accession, the relationship between our countries may be much improved.
That is also my hope.
With such consideration, the king expects that you will consider the suit of his brother. the Duke of Anjou.
Well, naturally, Her Majesty will consider the proposal most carefully.
It is unfortunate, however, that at this time the Duke's aunt, Mary of Guise, chooses to garrison Scotland with French troops.
But at first I was a little wary because I'd just come off filming Les Miserables, where I played another brooding man in black, and I thought, maybe they're too similar. And then I met Shaker Kapoor. He came over to Prague, where we were filming Les Miserables, and started to talk about Walsingham, who's, you know, Elizabeth's great spy master, as being like Krishna. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'm not getting a sort of exclusively English perception of this character. And I said, tell me about Krishna. And he said, Krishna is a very wise man who can kill people essentially and necessarily whilst smiling. And that kind of won me over. I think in reality he probably was, the Walsingham descendants won't like me saying this, but I think he was probably perceived by history as being a very astute, almost puritanical and rather dry bureaucrat. University educated, he set up basically what has become MI5, I suppose. There are 4 men in her life, I think, in this screenplay, and they all have quite different influences on what it means for a young woman to run the country at 25 years old, given that she comes to the throne under very difficult political circumstances. There's Cassel, played by Lord Attenborough, who's from an older regime and is grooming her a bit like the Queen Mum, I suppose, giving her the traditions and the conventions that are most orthodox. There's Dudley, with whom the film suggests that she has quite a passionate private relationship. And there's Norfolk, who's a northern aristocrat who also wants to make a claim to the throne, so he's a major rival.
What is the meaning of this?
Your Grace is arrested. You must go with these men to the Tower.
I must do nothing by your orders. I am Norfolk.
You were Norfolk. The dead have no titles.
He doesn't feel that she's suitable to rule his England, as he regards it, and he has a certain... We shot a sequence in the first couple of weeks of the shoot where she charms Parliament, has them, plays them very well, and we did a shot, whether it be included or not is up to the editors and Mr. Kapoor, where Norfolk acknowledged her political acumen. What appealed to me personally was that Shaker Kapoor would offer me a role which nobody else really in Britain would offer me, which is the part of a nobleman. He had imagination. I think he's demonstrated great imagination in the casting of the whole piece. He hasn't gone for the same old people playing the same old sort of characters. He's cast actors who have got to make a journey to the role they're playing, which I think's very smart on his behalf. So the appeal for me was the character I was asked to play.
Walsingham. Welcome to England.
Your Grace is surprised?
No, only a little disappointed.
I think it's Elizabeth's story, and it's about the development of her. She's thrust into this situation, and what interested me about the script was watching a person change and basically lock off parts of herself, you know, dehumanize herself in order to wield this power, and a woman among men.
I imagined that it was Elizabeth's first love, that she later on had Essex and various other young nobles at court that took her fancy, who were always considerably younger than herself. But certainly this is the love story, and I think that Robert Dudley's undoing possibly was that he genuinely loved Elizabeth more than anyone else at the court. The whole court system was to write poetry and profess your love to the Queen, who was the centre of this universe at court. And it was all a lie, really. The whole court and the system was a lie. And I think Dudley's undoing And certainly in terms of the screenplays, that he was the innocent who was very much in love and genuinely felt that love for her. And that, I think, was his ultimate downfall.
Why do you do this, Robert?
Because I love you. And though you will not see me, I am the only one who would care for you.
You love me so much you would have me be your whore.
For God's sake, I do this for us.
I asked you to save some part of us!
Lord Robert, you may make whores of my ladies, but you shall not make one of me.
Princess Elizabeth, you are arrested for treason. I am commanded to take you hence from this place to the Tower.
Tonight, I think I die.
She's plainly guilty.
What need is there of proof?
As long as she remains alive, there will be plots to raise her to the throne.
She is a heretic. She must never be allowed to succeed.
Got the basic premise of it fairly quickly, and it never stopped. Whatever happened to the script after that, however Shaker and I redefined, rewrote it, added things, developed characters, the actual premise and the actual structure didn't change one bit. Shaker included everybody, basically. It's wonderfully democratic and showed everybody the rushes, anyone who wanted to see the rushes could comment on them, and he wasn't afraid of comeback or criticism. In fact, he rather relished it.
Shaker knows how to work everybody. Everyone, not just the actors, from the runners to the producers to the financiers. Shaker works it, believe me. He knows what he's doing, that guy. But he doesn't work it in a very obvious way or a very obvious route. You know, he always says he likes to create chaos, and boy, does he ever. You know, it's often there was a sense of it wasn't a very calm shoot. I mean, a lot of the time it was very panicked, because Shaker does like to create chaos. He's not kidding when he says that. And a lot of the time people were in quite a hyper state, because things would be being changed, the script would be being changed, or the sets, or Shaker would make a decision and it would throw everything up in the air. But his best work seems to sort of rise to the top when he does that. And he knows that about himself. I mean, much as he works everybody else, he also works himself. He works Shaker, the man. He knows how to produce the best work from himself. And unfortunately for the rest of us, he gets it by stirring everything up and checking it into the air.
No, because I am Anjou! Yes, I am Anjou, yes! I am Anjou. Yes. Oh, nom de Dieu, elle aime.
I always say that there's one particular poem by Thomas Wyatt which is behind the whole movie, which isn't in the movie or anything, but when I began to think about what I wanted to do with Elizabeth, I used lots of scraps of poetry and images from literature, which I brought into the structure. And in fact, I wrote out all these ideas, scraps of poetry, scraps of ideas, scraps of biography on the back of a sheet of wallpaper, and took the sheet of wallpaper into the office to discuss it with Tim and Deborah, and said, look, this is the journey that Elizabeth is going to go on, and there'll be a pageant on the Thames, which was historically true.
My true love has my heart, and I have hers. My heart in me keeps her and me in one. My heart in her thoughts and senses guide. She loves my heart. For once, it was her own. I cherish hers. Because in me it bides. My true love has my heart, and I have hers. Marry me.
Her choices as a woman and as a queen. And so, you know, in film, you have to push things a bit. It's not like writing a history book in which you can stand back and be cool and say, well, perhaps or perhaps not. There was plenty of circumstantial evidence that she did sleep with Dudley. I mean, insofar as she moved his bedroom next to hers in the palace, and she openly flirted with him at court. But there's no proof, and neither is there proof the other way. But obviously I needed to push the piece forward. I needed to push the drama and the tension and the love. You know, it was clear to everyone that they behaved like lovers, whether they were lovers or not. And that was really the point, that what made it dangerous for her was this behaving like lovers. What made it dangerous for her was that if she had given herself to Dudley, then she'd given away something that she might regret, because she had to take it back. To be the queen, she had to take that back. That Dudley wasn't worthy of it. And I have said elsewhere that, and I wanted to make this point, that although there's a fuss, or been a fuss, or maybe it's still going to be a fuss about the virginity issue, that by putting them in bed together, I haven't changed the course of English history. And I haven't proved that Elizabeth slept with the historical Dudley. It was just a small nudge in the direction of romanticism to prove, as Philip Larkin said, our almost instincts, almost true, what remains of us is love. And Elizabeth did whisper Dudley's name on her deathbed.
Is an imaginative interpretation. It's Shaker and Michael's interpretation of the way that things could have been, and it seems a pretty, you know, it seems quite tenable that things would have been run that way. That she would have needed to preserve or create the image of herself as a virgin in order to create a kind of a divine-like quality that would make her reign endure much longer.
I am your sovereign. I have been placed here. God has placed me here. I am your anointed sovereign. I am your queen, and like my father, I mean to rule. There is one thing higher than royalty, my lords, and that is religion. I ask you to pass this act of uniformity. It's not for myself, it's for my people.
One's always looking here in England to try and find projects which have got some sort of scale that you think can work all around the world, and that, you know, because we're not part of, as it were, Hollywood culture, we tend to look at our history quite a lot, because there's a lot of it, to try and find ideas to base films on. And it struck me that this one was something that was very rich. Nobody had done a film about Elizabeth I for some time. The last one was, in fact, a TV series. And that trying to find a small part of her life to base the film on, you know, it seemed to be attractive. And, you know, why did she become the Virgin Queen? Why was she known as the Virgin Queen? Seemed to be quite a good question to try and tackle and answer in terms of our movie.
The reason we went to so many locations was because there was a particular look I was looking for in the design of the film. And that look was dominated by my need to show that destiny is bigger than man. Destiny is even bigger than Elizabeth I, and becomes that, is this the story of a woman that pushed herself to this point, or was it her destiny to come to this point and she was just inexorably being pulled towards that destiny? So I had needed a power that was larger than man. And I picked stone because I remember going to this cathedral the first time, and it was built in the 12th century. And it came as a shock to me that so many generations of people came and died in that, and stood in that cathedral. And after me, there will be many generations that will come and die, but this cathedral, the stone structure will still stand. So I used stone to signify the ultimate power of destiny.
I do now? Am I to be made of stone? Must I be touched by nothing?
I, madam, to reign supreme. All men need something greater than themselves to look up to and worship. They must be able to touch the divine. Here on Earth.
And I think that the material, the combination of having this rather interesting Indian who's going to direct this film about Queen Elizabeth I, plus a pretty good script, plus there's a sort of beginning of a buzz on Cate, helped us attract a really fantastic knockout supporting cast for the picture.
To do this movie, not to have a reverential camera, to come from outside, to look at it and to reinvent it, and he's done such an amazing job on that, and very, considering it just started with a few words scribbled on the back of a piece of wallpaper, you know, I'm amazed and proud and delighted, and, you know, it's an unbelievable journey.